On this week's episode, we're going to talk about living beneath your privilege. How is it possible that we could be created by the divine, who has access to absolutely everything, who is love, who is abundance, yet still allow ourselves to live at a level that is far beneath who we are called to be? How could we read the Word of God and still believe that we are supposed to be in scarcity? How is it that we allow ourselves to settle for less than what we know is our birthright? We're going to get into it today on the Anika Apple Podcast. First, a message from my heart to yours. One of the things that I am so excited about is seeing the influx of people talking about healing. I love that anytime I go through my feed, I'm seeing healing and options and lots of different modalities and conversations around people recognizing the depth with which healing needs to occur in order for us to become the best versions of ourselves. And it is true. If you've been feeling pulled to any kind of work around your healing journey, then you should listen to what your body and your mind are telling you. There is healing work for us to do across our physical bodies, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And so all of those pieces are important. And a lot of times what happens is we'll start to work on one aspect of our body, which is fine, but we will forget about nourishing the other parts. What works really well is having an area of concerted focus and then also having some ways where you are constantly nurturing the others. For example, taking up a regular spiritual practice is really helpful for you, even if what you've decided is the place that you want to do the most healing right now is physical. There are some things that you can do and put in place on a regular basis to strengthen your relationship to self, to ensure that once you have done some healing work, that you continue to utilize it. I recently did some work, and I recently did some work on my inner child healing. And one of the things that I have found incredibly useful are the use of affirmations recorded in my own voice. And I listen to them consistently. It is an ongoing practice that reminds me what I am saying to myself consistently, so that when I see behaviors happening throughout my day-to-day that are misaligned, I can immediately see the disconnect. And it helps me to then remember, what is the new story I'm telling myself, the new narrative that is true? What have I accepted as my truth? What do I want to say to whatever this is that's coming up for me in this moment? What I would encourage you to think about are some practices for each area of your body that you want to reinforce as you go through your healing journey. So for example, for your physical body, you might decide that every day you're going to spend some time outside in nature. Perhaps you're going to go on a walk, you're going to do some grounding, maybe you'll do some stretching. Maybe it truly is about you just connecting and allowing the sun to be a part of what you are embracing and taking in each day. A practice for your emotional body might be you're sitting with your emotions that you have through the span of the day and journaling about those emotions. What did I say to myself when I felt this way? What are some things that I want to say to myself in the future? What are some other ways that I can focus on a particular emotion that I want to bring into my day? Gratitude is such a great example. When we are activating an attitude of gratitude, we're constantly we're seeking the things in the world that we should be grateful for, which supports us both emotionally and mentally. It gives us the opportunity to strengthen both of those when we are utilizing gratitude. We're being grateful. There's an act and thought around gratitude, and also there's the emotion that gratitude brings up for us. Spiritually, we might think of prayer as an opportunity, or perhaps it is sitting and meditating, or maybe there's another spiritual practice that feels really aligned with you. One of my favorites to add is worship. I love to listen to worship songs and to sing them at the top of my lungs because there's no other way you should do it. But it connects me so deeply to this feeling of joy. I just find that connection and the relationship with God to be so filling for my soul. So whatever it is that you are feeling like you need, I want you to know that you can give it to yourself, that you can find the answer within yourself for how to fuel each of the areas of your body as you're going through your healing journey. And be curious. Explore the different options that are out there that are showing up in your newsfeed. Ask the people in your community what things they're doing to strengthen their relationships to self. As we focus on our individual healing, we heal as a collective. As we heal as a community, our collective is strengthened. The collective's healing then will help us transform the world. It is that simple, but it starts with the work that we do within ourselves. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. This is my message from my heart to yours. So I'm excited to get into today's message and to talk about living beneath our privilege. Here is the thing. I think that sometimes we have connotations attached to words that we wrestle with. For example, in my work for the Remarkable Life Blueprint, one of the words that God gave me was opulence. And I share this, if you've been through my Redefine Your Reality course, you might have heard me talk about this before. But there's this relationship to the word opulence that when God first gave it to me, I was like, oh, what's that? Like, that's not for me. And something about opulence was really kind of like coming up for me in a way that made me feel very like separate from it. Like I could not see myself as opulent. I didn't want to see myself as opulent. And I'm like, what is it with this connotation for this word? Well, opulence sounds like excessive luxury in my eyes, right? And so I'm like, well, that's not who I am, right? Like that is not who God created me to be. Not that I don't know that I am deserving of the things that God has set aside for me, but it was something about this viewpoint of it being excessive that I had issue with. And God often talks to me about the importance of words and also reclaiming them and defining them in a way that is in alignment with what God says about them. And so there's a shift that has to happen in our minds when we have certain words that come up. It was very similar when I started the Healing Crusade, and I was like, why a crusade? Why name it that when there's connotations attached with a crusade? And God said, because I'm reclaiming it for my good. I'm reclaiming it as a part of the path to help the world heal. And so a lot of times God will give us these words to challenge the paradigm of what we think about those words. So going back to opulence in this moment, there was a process that I went through to redefine what opulence meant. What does it mean in relationship to having a remarkable life? Well, to have a remarkable life is to have a life that is so incredibly, uniquely defined by you that it is remarkable. It's bigger than what you would have thought or planned for yourself. There is more than what you perhaps thought was possible for you. It's about you pushing yourself beyond limits to dream and envision what it is that you truly deeply want, and then to create that life. Some would say co-create it with God, but I'm telling you that God has put the pen in your hand and says, write what it is that you desire. So this relationship to opulence is that to have a remarkable life, there's something about dreaming and seeing, exploring what opulence looks like for you. And it took me a while, to be honest, to get past this connotation of opulence that felt like it was okay for somebody else, but not for me. Why was it that I would wrestle with opulence? Because opulence is not beneath my birthright. There is a question mark that comes up around the excessiveness of things, but excessive is not opulence. It's the way that I envisioned it. It's what I would have defined it as, but not God's definition. And I think in many cases, that's how we are when we start to hear the things that God says about us. For those of you that read religious texts and you see what has been written in there about the promises of God to God's chosen people, it's kind of difficult for us to see ourselves in that space. This piece of being set apart often makes us think that we're saying we're better than other people. But what if we actually stood in the truth of what was being said instead of adding on all of these other emotions that we have been taught to fear? The truth is that set apart doesn't mean that other people can't be set apart too. We are all God's children, all set apart with the potential to be wherever it is that God has placed for us, has called us to. Some people choose to move right away. Some people choose to take their time. Some people choose to make their own way, their own path there. And whatever it is that someone is choosing is simply between them and God. It is not for you to decide that because God has called you set apart, that you are in some way blocking other people, because that is simply not true. That's not how it works. God is infinitely abundant. There is more than enough for everyone. And so sometimes we get caught in our heads because we think to ourselves, well, I don't want to make it look like I think I'm better than other people. So don't think that you're better than other people. Don't make an assumption that that is the case. But recognize that God trusts you at the level that you're on for what God is trying to place into your hands. And in many cases, because of your heart, because of who you truly are, God can trust you and place so much in your hands that you can transform the lives of others. I've seen visions of things for people where what God is putting into their hands is enough to change countries, to impact hundreds, if not thousands of people because of the vision that God has given them, because of the innovation that they will create, because of the financial blessings and wisdom that God has given them. Who you are is a co-creation that has already happened with God. It's already in existence. And so when we deny ourselves moving into the position that God is trying to move us into, we're basically saying, it's okay, I want to live beneath my birthright. See, some of you wrestle with this because you're like, oh, I don't really want all of that. But here's the thing. You sat with God and co-created this path. You said, yes, I will go do these things. Yes, this sounds good. Yes, I want to be that person. Yes, God, would it be okay if we did it like this? Like before you were here, before you were in your mother's womb, right? That's what the word says in the Bible, in Jeremiah, right? God knew us before we were formed, and we sat with God. We co-created this life. And so in the beauty of our co-creation, we knew and understood some things better than you understand it right now in this moment. And what I need you to understand is that if you sit in the truth of where you are today, you are going to be beneath your birthright. If you allow your eyes today to say, oh, I just need this much. I'll be really good if I just have this. It won't be enough. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about everything. It won't be enough because you're going to allow yourself to stay in a place that is beneath where God called you to. And what you don't understand in this moment is that you can't see the whole picture. You don't know who else needs to come behind you on the pathway you're on. You don't know who's behind you waiting for you to open the door, to move out of the way so that they can come through the doorway. You can't quite see who's going to need to be the recipient of the thing that you create that then helps them springboard the thing that they're going to create, that then helps the next person springboard the thing they're going to create, that transforms the entire way that a country receives a natural resource that they need to get their hands on. You cannot possibly conceive all of the ways in which you're saying yes in this moment to what you already agreed to is going to transform the world. Just like I couldn't understand how saying yes to God saying you're going to heal the world could possibly mean that I would be on a path to help people heal. Because I wasn't a healer. I was a GM and an HR exec and a really good prayer warrior and, okay, prophetic, right? But a healer? But yet the truth is that when I go back across my lifetime, even in childhood, I knew how to do some healing practices that now I see and I recognize that people do and they heal. That I understand things. I could have someone call me and say, I've been wrestling with this. And I would say, oh, you should think about this natural remedy. And then I would say, well, let me just double check. And then I would go to my natural remedy book and I would look and I'd be like, yep, that's that essential oil. That's that herb. How do I know these things? Because in the creation of who I am, it was all already present. This journey of life has been about remembering the truth of who I am. That's your path too. You are remembering who you are. It's not just simply about learning. Now, this doesn't mean that there's not stuff for me to learn about my healing path. And I certainly am not going to heal the world by myself. Let me be clear. So for those of you who know you're called to healing, let's talk, right? We got work to do. But living beneath your birthright means that you're blocking the path for other people. Somebody watching this video in this moment is like, I was wondering the same thing, Anika. How am I supposed to heal the world? How am I supposed to, I don't know how to do what these people do. Like, why would God tap me? Because God has a reason. Because there's something about you and who you are and maybe things that you haven't remembered yet that have positioned you for this moment to be someone to usher forth what it is that needs to come through. Sometimes God just needs purity. Sometimes God just wants somebody who has the capacity to love people in a way that is as close to unconditional as we can make it happen in our humanness. Sometimes God wants someone who looks like they're going to do a total 180. Their life has always been about this, and all of a sudden, now their life is always about this, because then other people can look and say, wow, they transformed their lives. When I knew that person, they were like this, and now I see this person like this. And the truth is, it doesn't matter why God planned this plan the way they did. What you can own in this moment is that you were there, co-creating this path with God. It's why there are these moments where you're like, but yet I still know I'm supposed to be doing something with this. I just don't know what it is. And I get it. Because most of us that have said yes to our path, we remember those moments really well. Maybe there were moments, maybe there were years, stop trying to get all in my business. But I'm calling you forth into yours because this is your time. And if you are allowing yourself to live beneath your privilege, then you are going to be a blocker for other people. And most of us, the beauty I love about this is most of us sit in a place where we would never want to impact somebody else. We might be like, yeah, if it takes me 20 years to get there, God, it's okay. I know I might have to sacrifice a lot of good, a lot of ease, but I'll just do it. I'll take one for the team. But wait a minute, I would stop somebody else? Oh no, I don't want to be in anybody else's way because they should have whatever they want to have. A lot of us have that kind of energy, right? And so if you're that person, then let that be your motivation. But hear me now when I say to you that if you're not walking on your path, you're going to be in the way for other people in some way. They're waiting for you to show up at a designated time to do a designated thing that then helps them with their designated thing. They're waiting for you to show the path. They're waiting for you to be the light. They're waiting for you to open the doors. They're waiting for something. And for those of you who wrestle with this energy around opulence that I was talking about earlier, here is what I would tell you. We need resources for our assignments, period, full stop. And what's beautiful is that most of us that God desires to put resources in our hands, we wrestle with this because we're like, do I have enough wisdom? Am I going to take care of it? Like, we have all of these things, we have 100 reasons why God shouldn't choose us. But those very same reasons are the same reasons that God chose us and why God allowed us to walk this path. Because what God knew is that you wouldn't forget the impact that you made on yourself by the choices that you made. God knew that you would learn from those experiences, that you would bring the wisdom forward into this time. God knew that you were trustworthy. God trusts you. So if God can trust you, who knows every single thought, every single part of your path, then I'm telling you, you can lean in and trust yourself. We need resources for the journey, for the things that we are to build and what we are to do. And opulence is a part of that. And that doesn't mean excess, especially not if what you are going to have is more than enough for you and your neighbors, because then it's for your neighbors too. So we can get out of our heads about this thing, this reconciliation we have to make with where we are in relationship to our birthright. We actually need to have all of whatever it is that God has given to us. We need it. And we need to allow ourselves to walk comfortably into this season, knowing that God has fully prepared us for what is to come. And we get to remember that we saw all of this and still said yes. And that should give you peace in this moment about your path to purpose, that you already know these things. You're just remembering. And when it feels hard to reconcile, get help. That's why having a community around you is so important. I talk about the Healing Crusade all of the time. It is a great place for you to have support as you're going on your healing journey. And what is remembering for us? It's healing. It's healing the relationship that we have to the truth that lives within us. It's allowing ourselves to really believe that we know what's been hard for us to say that we could agree with because it doesn't sound like what people say in the world. Sometimes it doesn't even sound exactly like what was written in the word, but you know it's what God is saying. Then you go back and read the word and you see it differently because you're healing. Because when you heal, you can see, understand, and accept truth in a way that is difficult to see when your eyes are blinded through your trauma. We are in a really pivotal time in our world. And there are so many of us that know we are called for this moment. We're all called, but who know we are called for this moment and are reconciling with readiness. And I'm telling you right now, don't waste another minute. Make a beeline to your sacred space, sit with God, and have the conversation. Cry, yell, scream, pour out everything that makes you feel insecure and unable to deliver what it is that God has asked of you, and leave it at God's feet. Let it all out and let God show you the truth of who you are. Let God remind you how you are capable. Let God show you the things that you have already navigated through that have prepared you for this. Let God attend to your aching, confused, worried, sad heart. Let God attend to it so that you can let go of the scarcity mindset that has been given to you over and over again by the world to keep you limited in who you have been, because you, my friend, are called. It's time for you to just simply say yes and to walk in your truth. And that means allowing yourself to receive what God has for you. I watch so many really brilliant and talented people. This is in my circles, particularly women. They're men too, but particularly women who are living beneath our birthright because we've been afraid to accept more. But God has called us to a life that is uncommon and extraordinary. It's not an ordinary life. And God trusts us with those things. God trusts us with what God is putting into our hands. And our responsibility is to reconcile the gap between how we see ourselves today and how God sees us. That's our work, is to reconcile that. When we reconcile that, no longer do we think we are comfortable living beneath our birthright. Once we reconcile the dissonance, we're like, oh, that's why God wants me to have that. That's why God positioned me in that place. That's why God said I'm supposed to have this. That's why God says I'm supposed to move like this. That's why God has been telling me to do things in this kind of order. Yes. That's the reconciliation of your truth. So here is the thing. You do no one any favors by living beneath your birthright. No one. Pick your favorite characters in the Bible and ask yourself, what would have happened to the condition of humankind if they had not allowed themselves to be pulled up into God's vision for them? What would have happened? I see Esther right now. What would have happened had she not risen to the occasion? What would have happened with Joseph and David, Noah? What would have happened? Think about the way in which God speaks about you. Think about it for a moment. There's nothing that God says that's supposed to be in scarcity or lack. There's nothing that's not incredibly brilliant and capable. And what God desires for you is to have this full, incredibly extraordinary life that brings glory to them and helps to transform the way others see themselves. And the hard part, I know, is that when you are early on in this journey, when you're one of the firsts, is that you see yourself with your human eyes. And there are not enough examples of people who are doing what you're doing, how you're doing it. But it's because you're the trailblazer. You're leading the charge. So you get to be the one to step boldly out in faith and to walk the path that God has assigned for you, that you co-created, that you're remembering, and to make a decision that you want to see yourself on this path. Because when you will open yourself up to the vision, when you will allow yourself to see it, God will show you. And as you begin to see, you will be more confident. And even when you have those moments where your confidence is wavering, you will be able to lean on the fact that you know you saw what you saw. You'll be able to remind yourself. But there are people waiting for you. They're waiting for you to live at your level of privilege, at your birthright. And for far too long, we have been sacrificing what was our birthright. We've sacrificed our peace. We have minimized the depth of our wisdom and our knowing. We have even erased some of the places that we have had incredible and immeasurable impact on others. And God says, no more. No more. From here out, it will be a choice for you to live beneath your birthright. You cannot be held accountable for what you didn't know. But now that you've heard this message, you know. Now that you have heard and you recognize that you've been living beneath your birthright, you know. Now you're making an active choice. And I hope what you choose is to trust what God has placed on the inside of you. What you desired, what you said yes to, and what you know is true. And step boldly out in confidence and do that thing. And if you need help and support, there are plenty of people out here that can help you and support you. I'm more than happy to point you to some of the offerings in my business, particularly Soul to Crown, Crown to Soul, which is a divine guidance session that helps you connect to your truth within, to trust your intuitive guidance. But there's so many other opportunities for you to connect with people that can help you on this path. And if you are wrestling, it's time to make those connections. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Anika Apple Podcast. I hope that you will really take to heart the message for today. We are not intended to operate in a way that we allow ourselves to live beneath our birthright. It is so important for us to lean in and begin to really trust our intuitive nature and to understand the purpose that God has placed on the inside of us. As I mentioned in the episode, if you're looking for support, there are a couple of different offerings that I would direct you to on my website at anikaapple.com. Soul to Crown, Crown to Soul offers a beautiful opportunity for you to hear purpose pouring through me divinely for you as you connect it to what you know intuitively about who you are. One of the other offerings in my arsenal is integration coaching, which gives you the opportunity to integrate the parts of yourself that feel disconnected from you living in your truth. And so it looks like helping you to show up more fully across all of the ways in which you show up in the world, whether at work or in your relationships, etc. If you'd like to learn more about the ways that my options can support you, feel free to set up a free discovery call, which you can also find at anikaapple.com. Wishing you, as always, peace and blessings.